Hello and welcome back to Beyond the Trailer Park. We have a full house this evening. This is pretty awesome. I'm enjoying this. Before we get started, Trump, fuck you, from Canada. That's all I gotta say. Oh, and the rest of Ontario who voted progressive conservative, fuck you too. And the Ford Nation, whatever the fuck you people think that is. But anyway, and good evening to Nicola and Trav over in the chat. Howdy ho. Trav says, my girl Sharon. Woohoo! So
That's so funny that Trav mentions me first. He did a podcast with Morgan, or still does one. And he's totally throwing her the shade. I'm sorry, I just misgendered you, Trav. 5 seconds in, Sharon gets one. They throw Morgan the shade.
There you go. That's all right. But let's start there. So joining us from, I believe it's New Jersey, Sharon Frankel. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good to see you again. I had the pleasure of hanging out with Sharon in the clusterfuck that was Milwaukee.
The infamous Milwaukee mythicist, MythCon, whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
Lord convention. We were the one row that was like in the middle of the theater watching Thomas Smith debate Carl Sargon of Akkad, and we're trying to cheer for Thomas. But we're in the middle, and we're like drowned out by all the shitlords, so he couldn't really hear us give him encouragement, unfortunately.
And we were being covered up by the guy with the Kekistani flag.
Oh my God, he was right in front of us, the Kekistani flag guy.
Oh yeah, that was loads of fun. But we made it fun anyway, didn't we?
Yeah, it was a good time. We were in the historic Pabst Theater. Which is much nicer than you would think.
Beautiful.
If you've ever drinking the Pabst beer. It's a nice place.
I can't stand beer, which didn't work very well in Milwaukee, but you know.
Oh my God, they're going to kick you out of Canada.
It's one step above.
Brown, have I not told you my I'm the shittiest Canadian ever spiel? Nicola's gonna start laughing now because he's heard this a few times, but so okay, not only do I hate beer, I hate winter, I don't like hockey, I don't like Tim Hortons coffee, I don't like the Tragically Hip or Rush or poutine.
How can you not like Rush? Seriously?
I know. Rush is the best.
Can't stand Geddy Lee's voice. I'm sorry. I
did think it was a woman the first time I heard him.
I thought Michael Jackson was a woman when I was little because I came downstairs and my parents were like watching one of his music videos and he had like the long black hair and and then I think he had like the eyeliner and like his lips were like really red. So I looked at my dad and I said, "Who's that woman?"
He said, "Latoya."
He was the dumbest child, I swear. Like, what? Pretty sure he was thinking that.
Well, and joining us down in hot and deserty Arizona and coming back again to join us is Dee. Dee Holmes. Good to see you again, Dee.
Nice to be here.
Excellent. And, of course, from the wilds of Pennsylvania, good evening, Beth.
Good evening.
And from the extra wild and crazy Miss, good evening, Miss Morgan.
Hey, how are y'all?
We're good. I know. Don't be so stressed. You can relax for a couple hours, right?
Yeah,
you should be studying for the bar, Morgan. What are you doing not studying for the bar?
I feel like that every second. I have also like just fallen behind in it, and because I just like feel so freaking dumb and just like it's just been awful lately, especially today.
You
It
guys
was just
don't know
brutal.
how lucky you have it. When I went to law school,
Oh, here
we
we go.
had to go through case books. Okay, we did not have. I mean, Westlaw was for rich lawyers, not for us.
That's a shame. No, by the time I got there, I started in 2002. Westlaw and Lexis had adopted the crack dealer model, and they started giving it for free to law students.
Yeah,
so
it's free.
You get addicted. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they didn't have the crack because they didn't have cheap. You know, this was before IBM invented the hard drive. Okay, so this was a very long time ago, and there were, it was kind of like
they discovered America. Did Christopher Columbus come over?
It was a really long time ago.
I'm gonna get mail now from people. They discovered America.
Well, no, it was back in the day. I wouldn't have had to take a bar exam to get licensed in Mississippi because we used to have diploma privilege, but then Mississippi College, which is the other law school in Mississippi, which has always been ranked significantly lower than us, sued Ole Miss and said, well, it's not fair, but you get bar privilege and we don't. And so then everybody started having to take the bar exam to be licensed in Mississippi, but I'm not taking the Mississippi bar because it's too expensive and I'd like to leave.
And whose bar are you taking?
I was going to take Tennessee to get a job in like the Memphis area.
From Mississippi to Tennessee, y'all.
I am slowly crawling. Like I don't have the money to go anywhere else, but yeah. So I mean, it's across the state line, slowly going back to civilization. But
crawling up north.
Yeah, I'm crawling at this rate. But yeah, so
which state?
So Tennessee, I was going to take that one, but Tennessee announced we're doing multi-state now. But then they said, but by the way, we're not offering multi-state until February. And I was already signed up for July bar prep. So, and I had procrastinated and not turned in my documents all to Tennessee yet. And I still had like 2 weeks to do it. But I said, okay, well, I'm just going to take a multi-state somewhere where it's open. And I was going to go to Alabama, but they were closed. Closed in February. Alabama was closed. They're like, no, ma'am. And so I was like, oh, well, then I'll just go to DC and do it because they're still open.
I have a joke. Does the entire state have the flu?
Does the entire state have the flu?
Some people out there get that.
Yeah, it was just like, we quit taking applications in February. In DC, it was just like, we just want a check and a form from somebody that's like, you went to law school. And I was like, this seems a bit sketchy, but okay.
DC. Yeah, that's where Andrew practices. Andrew Torrez.
It's like
he'll take anybody.
I guess I'm just stunned because when I went to law school in Texas, I had to go through a investigation my first semester. They wouldn't let you come back if you didn't pass the investigation, but the investigation was pretty sketch, I would say. And then you had to do a second investigation, including your fingerprints and all sorts of other stuff.
Oh, we still have that.
Yeah, you still have that
to sit the bar. And, but I mean, I set the bar in 1989, so that tells you how long ago it was.
That's okay. That's let's see, I was in 11th grade. That's not too bad. But anyway, so I am the only one here tonight that has no legal experience whatsoever because...
Oh, you have experience. Everyone has experience.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But I was just going to say Beth was trained as a paralegal, so she has a bit more expertise than I do as well. But that's okay. I'm open to learn some things. I loved how Sharon sent out a promo message before she jumped on, and it was like, we're going to talk about, the Masterpiece Bakery ruling at bracket Yellow Boat.
Well, I think that just something that popped into my head, and whether Sharon and Dee and well, Morgan technically, but we're all lay people in a sense that this, I'm going to assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, Sharon and Dee, I know your situation. None of you guys practice in civil rights, correct?
Nope. Never.
So this is basically,
I've done a civil rights clinic, and that's it.
Well, you're not.
She has
you're
more
not
experience than all of us. Then.
Yeah. So I mean, while we have the girls on with legal experience, there's some things sometimes in reading the rulings, a layperson like myself would be like,
Yeah.
So and because of the age variation, and I think this is perfect, we're going to get three disparate, maybe disparate, but three different opinions based on age
perspectives. Yeah.
So, and just to throw this out there, not all of us are atheists.
No.
And I know Dee, well, obviously I know Morgan, and she's my fucking co-host, but I know Dee, and I know how she thinks. And basically, to put it bluntly, she would be considered a heretic by most Christians. Sorry, Dee, but...
Well, it's true. I mean, how many Christians do you know who have it as a spiritual practice to go stand on a church's sidewalk?
Yeah.
Not very darn many.
Yes.
Well, and let me clarify that. Just stand on a church's sidewalk with, a protest sign.
Yeah. For those that might not remember, we had Dion about a year or so ago talking about her antics in protesting Mark Driscoll.
Well, since then, I have picketed the local Sovereign Grace Church several times, and didn't go out yesterday because my arms are sore from a pottery class, believe it or not, and they really ache. I also picketed.
It's easier if you have a ghost behind you helping.
Yeah.
And then I picketed the Highlands Community Church up in North Scottsdale. Very she, very rich, very related to the Alliance Defending Freedom. And their pastor was basically, I wouldn't say run out of town, but pretty close to it after it came out that in Modesto, he'd been sleeping with youth group girls, and in Scottsdale, at Scottsdale Bible, he had been fondling the youth group girls.
And he was pretty much a normal youth pastor.
Yeah, in Memphis, they give him a standing ovation.
Yes. Yeah. The case surrounding Hooley is tangentially, I can't say that word.
Tangentially?
Yes, thank you. Associated to what we're going to talk about tonight. So it's funny how this all interconnects.
It's all related.
When you have the signs, what do the signs say?
Oh, good Lord.
That's a good one. Oh, good Lord.
Well, that would actually be a good sign. But, stuff like when I was picketing Driscoll, I bug him about the fact that he treated his wife like crap, treats his wife like crap, I'm still sure.
That's in the Bible. You can't blame him for that.
Well, and then he abandoned Seattle and started this church here, didn't want to sit under church discipline, and that he plagiarized books, and that he took church money to promote his book through a skeevy outfit so it could get on the New York Times bestseller list.
It's hard to get caught taking church money since they don't have to report anything to the government.
Oh, no.
Yep.
I know. That's why I'm, it wasn't living in Arizona that turned me into a Texas church person. It was that living in Utah that did that.
And she's even embroidered this epic pillowcase.
I've got several epic pillowcases around here. I'm wondering if I've got one handy.
Embroidery crazy. It's awesome.
Oh, well, I've got my hat. This is, what have I got here?
On Earth? As it is in Reading.
Reading is the home of Bethel Church, which is like this middle part says local citizens protest Bethel's stand in LGBTQ conversion therapy. Bethel's basically taking over Reading kind of the way that Scientology took over Clearwater.
Ooh.
Do you mean Redding, California?
Yes, I do.
I used to have a boyfriend there. He was cool.
I'm sure he was cool, but about 10% of the population in Reading is nice but nuts.
That's one way to put it.
Well, there you go. So, as a complete and utter lay person, and I guess my only qualification is I do watch a lawyer on YouTube. I don't think that counts though. He's
a lawyer.
He's a copyright attorney. I watch his channel because he talks about YouTube stuff and whatnot, but he does talk about other cases. But what I took away, like a lot of people are saying, and especially the right-wing nut jobs are all going, oh, this means that we can discriminate against everybody now. Woohoo!
Yeah, they put a sign up at a hardware store that was like, no gays allowed. And I was wondering, well, how can he tell? Is he like, would you like to suck my dick or would you like some wrenches? Like, is that, and then if you say, yes, I'd like to suck your dick, he's like, can you please leave? Like, how are you doing that? Like, that's what I don't get is how it's enforced.
To steal someone else's joke, if somebody comes in, you go ding, 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 and if they go went the trolley, you spotted them.
Oh, fuck. Wow. But you're right. Like, it's ridiculous that these people think that they could even tell who's gay and who isn't, or for that matter, who might be bisexual or pansexual or
divorced
or divorced. That's a good one.
Or fornicator.
Yeah.
I mean it, and this is the slippery. I can't talk tonight.
Slippery slip.
Thank you.
Yep.
That many people are concerned about, some that work in civil rights, lay people in general, because even though the ruling was 7-2, with two of our usually more liberal justices siding with Phillips, they don't understand how those that do civil rights as a career, as a, that's what they do. How could it be stated that it's a narrow ruling? And I'm not sure if it was you, Sharon, or Dee, who brought up the fact that the case really only applies to Phillips or situations like Phillips.
Yeah. It only applies to his situation because they drew it very, very tightly. And I think the ruling may have been different had there not been specific facts involved. We talked about this earlier, but the fact that there was some, and I personally disagree with this. I think the court was entirely too sensitive on the side of Phillips. Seriously, if you're going to be a jackass, you should be able to, take the heat. But the court sided with Phillips in saying that the Discrimination Commission, or I forget the name of the commission,
Colorado Civil Rights Commission,
was mean to him, basically. That they were mean.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's what, because I did find another YouTube lawyer who broke it down, and I watched it. For me, it was just easier to watch that than trying to read through the whole ruling.
56 pages.
Yeah, I'm like, hey, here's somebody that can summarize it for me. Yay. So that was their take on it as well, was that the ruling was focused around, well, they said mean things about the guy's religion, therefore, it wasn't a fair ruling.
Well, I remember when the case first started. Now, one point we do have to keep in mind is that this case began in 2012. Oberfels was in 2015, and a lot of commentators have made the comments that had this case happened after Oberfels, Phillips most likely would have lost.
I'm not so sure about that.
Well, yeah, considering the makeup of the court, but because the reasoning being is that at the time when Phillips did this, his thinking was was protected to a degree. And what they did is they brought up the Azucar bakery case, also in Colorado, with Marjorie Silva. Marjorie Silva was approached by a Christian customer who asked for a Bible cake with anti-gay writing on it.
What kind of party was she having?
No, she's the baker. And she declined to make the cake. And of course, you know, because they're testing the water, it went to court and Silva won. And it gets into the whole hate speech versus hateful speech. And they tried to use that, saying that because Colorado ruled in Silva's case in the positive, that the message that she refused transfers over, they were being inconsistent in their rulings. And one thing I realized reading up on this, and well, Morgan can attest to this studying for the bar, is that the cases they refer back to, I mean, it makes your head spin. I mean, so I can understand when people get confused, but I think basically what it came down to is they were saying that the courts have to be neutral towards religion, and they weren't, because, and I remember in the beginning where reading this case was that it did come out, and this was one of the complaints Phillips made way back, is that the commissioners did make, well, I didn't think at the time disparaging, but I can understand the reasoning now, disparaging comments toward his religion. They were not being neutral.
There's a question in the chat from Belgarath 1966. Says, here's a question. Why didn't they reverse the lower decision and send it back for further legal proceedings like they would with a criminal case? Why did they just reverse it and be done with it?
Because in a criminal case, you have to have some sort of resolution. I mean, you have to send it back so that, you know, they can, you know, the lower court can do what the Supreme Court says, you know, reverse and remanded with instructions to, you know, review the sentencing in light of this opinion, blah, blah. So,
okay.
I think it's in their discretion for civil cases.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, is this going back to the agency? Sorry to interrupt you, Morgan. Go on.
Oh no.
Do they have to rehear this in the Colorado Civil Rights Commission?
No, not from my understanding. It does say in the little blurby shit before you get to the actual case that the lower judgment was reversed, and I think because this was a decision by the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, may factor into why it was not returned to the lower courts. They were overturning what the commission said. It's probably a legal technicality that I missed or might not even be mentioned, but that's a good question why it wasn't sent back. But I think it's probably a difference between criminal cases have to have a final resolution.
Right.
So, for sentencing, where
right.
Civil cases more.
Well, it's more impactful to a person if there's no resolution on a criminal case, because they may be sitting in jail or being on bond or whatever, and a civil case doesn't have that type of impact on a person's life. It's just a matter of, will you be assessed damages, and how much would that be if you were to lose, right? That makes, yeah. So it's, and I think a lot of lay people make the mistake of thinking that things that are a certain way in criminal law are the same way in civil law, and that's really not the case. In fact, our friends, the sovereign citizens, make that screw up all the damn time.
Yeah, but they will reverse and remand civil cases. That's not to say that they never do. In fact, it's usual that they do reverse and remand, because usually they're like, hey, lower court, you fucked up. You got to fix this and make it right. But in this case, and then they can also do that with commissions. Like in environmental law, you know, there's a lot of administrative proceedings, and I do a lot of that now. And they can reverse it down to that lower court to do, you know, and say, hey, put this in with line with our proceedings. Or they can remand it back to the commission even. But here, I'm not familiar exactly with Colorado law and how it works, but I think that, yeah, it's in their discretion, obviously, to just decide to end it here.
Yeah. Because they didn't technically rule on the First Amendment. They only ruled in part specific to the Phillips case. That might play into it as well. And that's where a lot of people are saying that basically what the courts did is punted the ball. They only ruled on this. Well, and I was pondering that earlier too, is that, yeah, because there's more cases in the funnel. In fact, well, we'll get to the one that just happened in Arizona, which actually used the Phillips case as a site. But there are more of these cases. Baron Stolzenel. I can't remember.
Baronel Stutzman.
Thank you. I gotta look backwards. Her case is coming up, and there's another one I believe out of Oregon coming up, and I know the one Oregon case with the Criers is there. I think it's in the appeal process, but this is basically because of who is running these cases, Alliance Defending Freedom. They're throwing spaghetti against the wall, and I think they're doing it intentionally until they get the spaghetti to stick.
They're looking for a case.
They're looking for, and this is why I've always said that I think Hobby Lobby, you could go back to Citizens United, but I really think it's Hobby Lobby was the test case.
Yes, I agree with that to an extent, but I think also Gorsuch with his wackadoo concurrence back when he was on the appellate court, this is before he was on the Supreme Court, his wackadoo concurrence and Hobby Lobby was, you know, the consensus was this is Yahoo bananas, because basically his argument was, well, everything that religious people do is an exercise of their religion, so, you know, it's a violation.
I think he made that same comment.
He did in this case as well.
In this case as well. So
he's teeing it up.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, in some ways, if we and I use we as in the left, the Democrats, not the theocrats, if we were to regain the administration, and I don't just mean the presidency, but primarily Congress and Senate, it could work in our favor, but the caveat to that is any judgeships that Trump has had a hand in while he's been in office, we're going to face consequences for 10 to 20 years.
At least. And, you know, yeah,
to the point where I kind of wish I had never gone to law school, because I thought things were going to be getting better and I could help change things. And now I'm just like, what the fuck am I even doing?
We need you even more.
Yep.
Think of it that way. Yeah, I mean, this case, I mean, like, I probably overread, but that's normal for me. I think this case sets a precedent, not legally precedent, but it sets the tone.
Right. I would agree with you.
What's coming?
On that. Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I think there are going to be more people out there who may be pushed. I wouldn't say pushed, feel like they, well, maybe my case will be the one that, puts those homosexuals back on their heels and, pushes them back into the closet.
Well, if you look at the what's her name? Baronel
Stutzman.
Thank you. If you look at her case, and she's another religious liberty case that, of course, ADF is in. Basically, she's making videos and shit for ADF, stating, "Yeah, I'm gonna lose my business," and yada yada yada, and she's saying all this shit, which is basically ADF talking points, which aren't even true. One, she was offered a settlement, and the settlement of, I think it was like $1,250 or something. It wasn't a lot. That settlement, if she were to pay that, her case would be over. But
no,
she keeps,
and it's not. But that's not the point. The point is, we have to smash the queers.
Yeah.
Well,
no,
I said that. Okay, and I'm gonna tell on myself. Not that I did this, but back when I lived in Houston in the 70s, the mayor, was it the mayor or was he the police chief at the time? It was Louis Welch. Anyway, he talked about, shoot the queers. I mean,
well, I think that's a problem. And part of the reason, for those that don't know, is I am a lesbian. So any of these cases, these religious liberty cases, disregard the fact that I'm an atheist. I mean, I've been fighting this kind of crap since, we'll say about 81. Okay? And it's when I started to take notice, because in 1986, I lost my job because I was a lesbian. I was outed by friends. They literally, so back then I had no recourse. I could have, as I said before the show, fought it under the 14th Amendment, but back then that was unheard of. Mm-hmm. Now, in the last few years, I don't remember if it was pre or post stroke, so it could have been 5 years ago for I remember. The EEOC made the 14th Amendment ruling saying that sexual orientation, is protected. So now I could, if that were to happen again, which in the job I'm in now is no concern, fight it on that grounds. But I've lived with this my entire life of, stomp the queers, shoot the queers. We have preachers now preaching it from the pulpit. Skylar Fiction did an interview with a 22-year-old preacher boy who basically said that gays should be executed. We have reports of not just backlash on LGBT individuals, but there's backlash against people of color. We're in a bad
situation right now, because if you're, look at, I live in Arizona, right? And for us, people of color does not mean black down here. It means Mexican, okay, or Hispanic, or somebody who doesn't look white, and that could include are, the tribal people that live here. Who were here before us, right?
Wasn't it in Arizona that one of the legislators was told to go back to his own country? He's fucking Native American.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and Morgan mentioned Jeff Amerks, the owner of the hardware store, who put up "No Gays Allowed" sign. We have the guy or the family, not busted, but some woman called the cops because they were barbecuing in a park. We have the incidents at the Waffle House.
If you know anything about Oakland, Oakland has been a black community since before.
It's my hometown.
Yeah.
Sharon's hometown.
I'm an exception, though.
Oh, I was gonna say, so Belgarath said, ugh, now you guys are gonna make me read the Gorsuch concurrence. I was trying to avoid that.
I haven't even read it, so there you go.
Take at least 4 aspirin and a bottle of whiskey, but not too close together that you end up making yourself sick.
Oh, and I just want to say hi to Alice. Hello. Gorgeous.
I mean, if I have to ever argue in front of Gorsuch, I think that's going to be my strategy. Take a few aspirin and a whiskey and then pop an Alka-Seltzer in my mouth and pretend I'm having a seizure or things go real bad. But yeah, just
and that's the thing, like with a lot of Trump's nominees and appointments have been, they are theocrats first.
Yeah, and they come to the conclusion they want to. It's like, I love how Gorsuch also was like, oh, well, we look beyond the text to find the meaning of a law. And I was like, oh, so much for that originalism you just threw out the window, where it's like the words are the end all.
But they don't apply that same.
No, it doesn't matter when it comes.
Hermeneutics to the Bible.
Oh yes, they do. It's I told someone teaches at Liberty. I told her on Twitter today that she's claimed she was an inerrantist, and I said, I'd like to cross-examine you because I'd find out the limits of your inerrancy pretty quickly. I mean, they pick and choose. Hello.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I have a question from a complete ignoramus's perspective. Mm-hmm. Now, in Canada, we treat religious freedom to mean that you can believe whatever you want and the government is not going to throw you in jail or have you killed. That doesn't mean you get to do anything associated with your religion, if you can say it's religious. And it seems to me that in the States, they push that idea way further, that like more towards I can do what I want because it's my religion. They seem to push that.
There are limits to that, and I'll defer to the people who've been to law school more recently. But even the Supreme Court might have an issue with, say, polygamy, which it was Reynolds v. U.S. 1878. But that was a Utah territory case. And basically under the Edmunds-Tucker Act, polygamy was outlawed. Could do that because Utah was a territory, not a state. They've never really touched on that again since then. It's hanging out there as to what the Supreme Court would do. I mean, look what happened. We had those, what was it, the Brown family, the bunch of, what do they call that?
Cody Brown and his wives from
Cody Brown, the sister wives, right? Okay, so those guys tried to bring a what I would consider another one of those preemptive cases, and they had Turley as their attorney. And personally, I wanted to smack him up and downside the head because, I mean, that's like one of the first things you learn in constitutional law is that if it's is that you can't just bring an advisory case. I mean, in Canada, you can. I mean, that whole polygamy case they had in BC was an advisory case. There wasn't a party in interest. It was just the state, doing a case.
And they were trying to suss out, I think, because they wanted to prosecute those guys, which they have since done.
Right.
They've been convicted. And I think they were trying to suss out the likelihood of a conviction occurring and or standing by doing that. Now, I actually don't have a problem with consensual polygamy. But we all know that when religion gets involved, that gets to be very murky waters.
It's not polyamory, it's polygamy. And inevitably, the polygamy that I'm familiar with is, the the Utah style polygamy where they marry off teenagers.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I would even be okay if they said, well, it's legal, but you must be like over 18 before you can enter into a polygamous official marriage or something. Like, I would be okay with a restriction like that, but that's
and the thing is that, that's kind of, but the people that practicing poly are not not the issue as far as I'm concerned. The ones that are the issues are the guys that think it's perfectly okay to marry a 14-year-old.
Exactly.
And
the religion. It's the idea of religious privilege in the law, that if it's my sincerely held religious belief, I should be able to do.
Yeah, that is the key phrase in the whole stance that generally, although it is changing in my opinion, that the courts hold. They will not rule on theological issues, i.e. sincerely held religious beliefs.
Well, it depends on...
As long as the state's interests are not superseded. And that's I think one of the sticking points with this case, bound into the fact that they held that that Colorado was not being neutral towards Phillips's religion. And I think it's becoming, and this goes back to ADF and Liberty Counsel and JPI and all the other religious liberty law firms, is that they're trying to water this down. And I believe, if I have my names correctly, it's Robert P. George in the abortion fight that solidified this tactic where he would write a concurrence, even though a concurrence really wasn't needed, but he wanted to get a cite. He wanted his notions to be cited by other writers and authors and articles, and watered down the whole idea that abortion is cool. Not cool, but okay. But they're starting to transfer that tactic into specifically the LGBT issues with the religious liberty and the bakers and the calligraphers, for weddings and shit like that. It's just that distinct line of not ruling on theological issues or how a church, and when I say a church, any religious organization, whether it's Judaism, Islam, whatever, as far as jurisprudence within their own organization, like punishing a minister for marrying a gay couple, that's left up to the church. The courts won't get involved in that. But now go ahead.
The matter of whether something's religious freedom or religious privilege can often just be a matter of phrasing, because take the Masterpiece Cake Shop. So the facts in that case are that the guy, the baker, he didn't want to sell a wedding cake to a gay couple. And the facts are that this refusal happened long before there was any discussion of what the cake was going to say or have on it. It was just that he didn't want to sell a wedding cake to a gay couple. So if you want to rephrase that as religious privilege, it's, if I have a sincerely held religious belief that some people oughtn't to get married, then I can refuse service, even though the law says I'm supposed to give them equal service. If you want to phrase that as religious freedom, which is how he sees it, you would say that it is against my religion to have to sell these people a wedding cake.
And that's pretty much what the Bresch and Nib case, they pretty much went with the same thing. They wanted to place a sign in their window at their establishment saying that their religious belief was male-female marriages only, not same-sex, and they didn't want to serve same-sex couples for for their invitations, and the court wasn't having any of that. It's actually really, it was really a pretty huge smackdown, which is probably why ADF hasn't said a whole lot about it, because they got savaged is what happened.
Oh, they don't mention their losses. Those just didn't happen. What? We went to court? I missed that. What? Crazy. But yeah, they're just so this kind of reminds me of the law in Mississippi right now, where basically what Kim Davis did is perfectly legal here in Mississippi because of the HB 1523. And you were talking about, preemption and things. And the reason why I'm actually kind of like have a different view is because of things like this, where basically the court said, we can't strike down this law, which says that we only recognize marriage between a man and a woman. We only recognize the gender that you're assigned with at birth. We only, and then also that if any, let's see, I'm trying to find the thing. Let's see. It has, yeah, I got it right here. So, yeah, let's see. Yeah, sexual relations are properly reserved to such a marriage. And it also states that the state government of Mississippi shall not take any discriminatory action against a religious organization when it comes to issuing marriages, employment, including state employees, sale, rental, housing, adoption, declines to participate in sex reassignment surgery, conversion therapy, or services that accommodate or facilitates marriages based upon or in a manner consistent with a sincerely held religious belief or moral conviction. So even if you're a bigot atheist, you can do it.
I was going to say, you're going to have a problem with like the Disciples of Christ, because they'll marry same-sex couple. So
yeah, but it's just, yeah, so I could, and the law is so badly worded and broad that if my boss doesn't believe women should wear pants, I can get fired. And I have no recourse. So it's just like, yeah, it's absolutely bananas. But yeah, they
actually the thing is that you might have recourse under the federal discrimination statute, though. Because if we've had issues here where a certain dominant religion got smacked down a few times because they were discriminating against their non-Mormon employees.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the Fifth Circuit is also kind of bananas right now in the makeup. So yeah, I'm in the Fifth Circuit, so it literally would take a U.S. Supreme Court to strike it down, even though we do have a very good liberal federal judge in Mississippi, and Judge Reeves. He's really, really good. Love him. But yeah, but he, the Fifth Circuit, basically he's the one that overturned the law before it went into effect, and then what happened was the Fifth Circuit came back, and at first I thought they were going to get smacked down because the ADF attorney, because Phil Bryant, our governor, wanted the Attorney General, Jim Hood, which our Attorney General is a Democrat. So he said, no, I'm not defending this law. What the fuck is wrong with you, you crazy person? So then so then Phil Bryant contracted with ADF to go and defend it. And yeah, so ADF was getting smacked down in oral argument. I remember from this one guy who's like, just tell me how it's not discrimination. And she couldn't say how it wasn't. Like, she was just like going around in circles, and he just kept asking, tell me again how it's not discrimination, and just kept hammering her. And she was just like, I was like, if a judge ever questioned me like that, I would just pass out. But so yeah, it's just absolute bananas. But then they ended up saying, oh, well, nobody's actually been injured, so you have to wait until there's a doctor who says, oh, well, we get state funding, so I'm not going to help this trans person who just came into the ER and then they're dead. Like, so that's why I kind of get sort of salty towards the people who, are like, oh, well, it's a preemptive case, so you can't do anything about it. I mean, I understand that to an extent, but when it comes to, these kind of more serious, literally life and death matters, that's
we ran into that problem with Roe. That was the whole problem with Roe.
Well, here's a question. It's kind of an addendum to what we're talking about. But for the three of you that went to law school, actual law school, I went to paralegal. Where in law school did you learn that pulling the shit these religious liberty law firms do? Where did you guys learn that? I mean, what book teaches you to accept discriminatory practices, whether they are by the legal definition or via this.
And when I first started law school, Bowers versus Hardwick had just been decided. Okay, and for those of you who aren't familiar, Bowers versus Hardwick approved of the state of Georgia being able to prosecute gay sex. Okay, that was in 1986. Okay, fast forward 17 years, and we have
Lawrence versus Texas.
Lawrence versus Texas. Thank you. I knew it was Texas, but I couldn't remember the other party. But see, you have to remember the whole notion when I was in law school that we would have a gay rights that we have now was completely, just simply not there. It was just not in our heads. I mean, we were still, working through, and not very successfully, as you can tell, because we've got problems now, civil rights. So, I mean, gay rights was simply not in the picture over 30 years ago. I mean, AIDS was in the picture.
Yeah.
So, but I will add something here. Somebody made a comment, and it's worth mentioning that a couple of Trump's judges have been unwilling to go on the record as to whether they thought Brown versus Board of Education was rightly decided. Okay, which my response to this, and I'm not the only one who thought this, was that if you had tried this 30 years ago, Brown versus Board of Education, you would have failed the class. You would have failed out of law school. They would have been escorting you out, because even though law school was still a very white place, we were at least putting on the facade that we were in favor of integrated schools. We all know that's not.
Yeah, I'm tempted to ask, what about Dred v. Scott? Where do you come on that one? Let's go back a little bit. But Plessy v. Ferguson, it's but yeah, and it's just, and then when they'll refuse, and then they're unqualified as well. Many of these judges, the Bar Association is coming out and saying this person is unqualified to be a judge, and yet they're being approved anyway, which is unheard of in the past. At least you would get somebody who knew what the hell he was doing. And I remember this is from a Republican in Louisiana who was, I can't recall his name at the time, but he got up there and he was just asking me, he's like, have you ever tried a case? No. Have you ever done a deposition? I assisted with one once when I was in law school. It was absolute lunacy. And I was just like, how is this man going to be a federal judge when he has basically been doing just, I don't know what, because it seemed like he had not been practicing law or anything.
Not a litigator.
He had not, well, at least not a litigator, but yeah, just not involved in the court process whatsoever.
Contract law.
Yeah, which is fine, but he never litigated a contract.
Yeah,
he had just,
exactly.
Yeah. So, and that's the whole point of going to court, is you're litigating something and you're not going to even know, he probably doesn't even know his rules of evidence. He was even asking him he asked him a basic question. I can't remember what it was, but it's something a first year law student would know. And yeah, just, it was, and he just was like, oh, I don't remember. And it's like, really? Because this is the first thing you learn. What? And the bar was like, yeah, this guy's unqualified, but he got through anyway. So,
wow.
It's
all I can pray is that hopefully they'll get bored and decide that they want to do something else.
Yeah, that's honestly it. Or, they keep getting overturned, but it's stacked with Trump judges, because what a lot of people don't realize is when McConnell pulled his stunt of halting the nomination of Merrick Garland, or even the hearing to get him, it was so sad. I remember when he went around and passed out here's some info about me, hoping he could get some kind of process going, little fact sheets like he's on Tinder. But yeah, he blocked other judges as well.
275 total.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that doesn't get talked about enough, I feel like, with that it's not just the Supreme Court that was held up, it was like all these federal judges.
All federal judges that President Obama was tasked with appointing were held up by the Republicans. They would not have hearings on any of them. So, and what I find kind of funny, not in a ha-ha way, is that if you look at a lot of these judges that he's appointing and a lot of the lawyers out of, I'm going to use ADF again as an example, most of them are under 35.
Mm-hmm.
Which is bananas. I hope I'm a federal judge by then.
Yeah, and I find that interesting because one is, as we said, we're going to feel the effects of these appointments for at least 10 to 20 years.
Oh, and they're going to outlive me probably. Like Gorsuch is like a silver fox over there, just like, and then Ruth Bader Ginsburg's trainer is probably like the most important person to our democracy right now. Like she's got to keep doing these push-ups and eating kale, and I'm like, she should be on a beach. Like what?
I think she said in one video she doesn't like kale.
I don't like kale.
She better start.
There's actually a YouTube video. I think Colbert did it, showing her part of her morning exercise routine.
Oh yes, I did see that. I think
now, I don't know how true the video was in the sense that how true to life, but she does actually have a pretty extreme exercise regimen.
She's fueled by spite.
But just to punctuate that whole thing, Alice had actually said a little while ago she worries about the current Supreme Court. She said, I thought it was safer than it was. And I think that's a lot of people's take on it right now, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, Sotomayor even today, they issued an opinion on the Ohio voter roll case, which Sotomayor basically says in her dissent, the Supreme Court right now, she was like, something is very badly wrong with us. And so you cannot count on us for your protection anymore. She was like speaking directly to like minority voters. Like, yeah. And she was just like, it was basically like take to the streets, change, vote,
Well, in defense of that ruling, I do know here in PA, if you do not vote in 6 years, you will be removed from the roll. And that's all, and I've been here 18. Yeah, so I don't think the ruling was too far out there. I don't agree with it.
People I know here who have never voted, which I yell at them every time I find that out, but they like our voter rolls are based on your income taxes. So wherever you are listed as living when you file your income taxes, you will be on the list in that riding.
Yeah, and that's because you guys do it that way. Here, we are so, we have so many different jurisdictions. It's like you have federal, then you have state, then you have county, then if you live in a city, you have city, then you have taxing districts. Oh my God. It's like, it goes all the way down to, in some places where they have like a water district, which by the way, in Arizona is pretty darn important.
Alice also says, because Alice works for the military, she says, when the trans ban gets to the Supreme Court, I may have to have my resume in order, which is
and I think this is part of the backlash I think we're going to see with this case, and it's not just LGBT issues. It goes the whole gamut of any minority. And it scares me because, like, as I said before the show, I live in a one-horse town, okay? We have multiple bars and multiple churches, neither of which appeal to me. I have one grocery store. I have one pharmacy, okay? It's a big box store pharmacy, so I'm kind of protected there. But there's, there could be a caveat. We have $1 General. I don't drive anymore. I will probably never be able to drive anymore since my strokes. So I could walk into the grocery store. Well, I did today, and they could have said, I'm sorry, we're not going to serve you because you're gay. Or we're not going to serve you because you're a woman. Or we're not going to serve you because you're disabled. We're not going to serve you because you're a lesbian. People like me are fucked.
Yeah, that's what I tell people.
Or could be. I should read.
Well, and like, this is what irritates me about other privileged folk, because I was in a thread just before we got on the show, and there was this, I'm assuming because of how she was talking, this white cis het woman on the thread of a trans person going, if you just love yourself, everything will be okay. And I'm like,
Becky, no.
What are you on, bitch? Like,
well, try being bipolar who has a twisted mind and love yourself. When you were told every single day growing up that you're going to burn in hell.
Possible.
Yeah, that doesn't protect you from discrimination. Like, what if you need to go to the hospital and I'm just going to be like, oh, I love myself. Oh, well, now I'm healed.
Oh, I love myself. It's not going to help my friend go to the bathroom.
Yes, like the person whose thread it was a trans person, and she was expressing her concern that, you know, her rights are eroding before her eyes, and she was feeling very marginalized. And this person is like, you people just need to stop with the negativity and love is the answer. I'm like, get a fucking clue, you stupid twit. Like, that does not grow you rights. And she's like, oh, well, you all have inalienable rights. Everybody's equal. We all have the same right. I'm like, no, the fuck we don't.
That's not what the courts are saying. But in or when people say this, they'll say, oh, we'll just go somewhere else. They'll go out of business. Bitch, I live in Mississippi. Like, really? You think they're going to go out of business? They'll get more business if they're like, oh, we don't serve gays. I mean, not in the area I live, because I do live in a town, in a college town. So, you know, slightly more progressive than the rest of the state, but it's like that bougie white people progressive. So it's like, eh. But, so yeah, but go to the Delta. Like, that's what I tell people. I'm like, go to the Delta and tell me how many choices you have. And just go somewhere else when you're impoverished and you have no transportation because roads are basically just one giant fucking pothole.
So, you're supposed to put a sleeping bag on your back and walk until you find a town that
won't hate you. Yeah, glad we didn't tell. Glad they didn't tell black people that when, you know, freaking segregation and stuff like that. Like, it's the same like thing. It's like, replace it with black and then be like, would this be allowed? It's just, it's absolutely bonkers to me that it's.
If I could have through the internet and slapped her upside the head, I would have. I was just like, now I to backtrack a little bit. I have a question about the masterpiece ruling again. I think it was Sharon who said that the whole thing started, like, you know, Mr. Religious guy there, he started his objection before anyone even knew what would be written on the cake. Was it part of his argument that it was not only impeding his religious freedom, but his freedom of expression as an artist?
Yes.
How can that be if he didn't even know what they wanted to put on the cake?
Because they were twisting the facts to try to make this
an
artistic expression case. I mean, very tenuously, you can say, you know, my expression, like, I mean, it's stupid because it's kind of, I feel like it's a little bit incongruous to be able to argue both free expression and religious free exercise in this, because when you get into free expression issues, you get into issues of equality and everybody being treated the same and everyone having to, you know, put up with all the same stuff and whatever. Religious freedom, not necessarily about equality. It can be about people getting special treatment. But, you know, but to use an equality provision of the Constitution to argue against equality provision of Colorado law. That's pretty ironic to me.
Well, I think our Ruth Ginsburg actually made that point in her dissent. I'm trying to find the quote.
Are you talking about the footnote where she bitch slaps Justice Thomas?
I think so. I'm trying to find my notes on it.
She's like, bitch, you're crazy. But yeah, it's like if they had a pre-made cake, it's like you could, like, with just flowers on it, and he was just like, oh, well, you're forcing me to express myself by serving a gay couple. And it's like, no, you're not. You've already made the cake. Or like, you know, like if it was pre-made or if it was just a standard order, like it's not like they were going to ask him to put like a bunch of giant dildos on the cake. Like what? Like I just don't get what the fuck. Like they think creative expression.
And that goes to, in my mind, that goes to the whole artistic expression. So are you telling me that you just throw these pre-made cakes together? You don't put any thought into them. So you just throw your flour, water, sugar, salt, and whatever else goes in a fucking cake.
Like,
I don't.
If you, to my mind, if he wasn't really trying to be a douchebag, he could have said, okay, look, I don't feel right promoting a homosexual wedding, but if you are okay with me doing, you know, some flowers, or if you guys are into puppies, or if you guys like fishing or whatever, you know, I can do something that's you know, unique to you two as people without me saying anything about you being gay. Would that be okay?
He didn't want to be the supplier.
But he didn't want
That's what wedding cakes are.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying if he didn't want to be a douchebag, which obviously he did, but if he did it, there are ways around, you know, that you can serve a customer in that manner without sort of going against what you believe.
Well, let me read this from the brush and nip opinion, because I think it gives us something along those lines. The case before us is one of a blanket refusal of service to the LGBTQ community and not a First Amendment challenge to a specific message requested by a specific customer. Simply stated, if appellants as an economic entity want to operate their for-profit business as a public accommodation, they cannot discriminate against potential patrons based on sexual orientation. It bears repeating that Section 18-4B regulates conduct, not speech. Accordingly, the conduct at issue is not the creation of words or images, but the conduct of selling or refusing to sell merchandise, either prefabricated or designed to order equally to same-sex and opposite-sex couples. This conduct, even though it may incidentally impact speech, is not speech. Further,
go ahead, Deanna, sorry.
Further, allowing a vendor who provides goods and services for marriages and weddings to review similar services for gay persons would result in a, quote, community-wide stigma inconsistent with the history and dynamics of civil rights laws that ensure equal access to goods, services, and public accommodations, unquote. And that is actually a quote from Masterpiece Cake Shop.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and that goes back to the Azúcar case as well, because what they determined in her case is that she would not have made that cake for anybody. It doesn't matter whether he was Christian. And as I said, it gets into the whole hate speech versus hate difference. Yeah, and it's not actually a quote from Ruth Bader, but this is from SCOtus blog. They said that the factual allegations are starkly different from the allegations made by Craig and Mullins. Craig and Mullins sought a cake to celebrate their wedding, and even though Phillips regularly sold wedding cakes to heterosexual couples, they were outright denied because of their sexual orientation. In fact, Craig and Mullins did not even have the opportunity to discuss any specific cake design before being turned away by Phillips. Had Craig and Mullins been a heterosexual couple, Phillips would have sold them a wedding cake. Thus, the denial of service to Craig and Mullins, unlike the denial of service to Jack, going back to the Azúcar case, was based on protected characteristics, their sexual orientation, and was a clear violation. And it goes, if I remember correctly, I'm not sure if I read it in the ruling or commentary, was that not only was Phillips arguing on his religious freedom, but also making the actual cake was speech. And this is one of the things that ADF is pounding. And this is where some of the distortions, lies, come in from these plaintiffs, like, you know, Bernal, Stutzman, etc., is that they're twisting, you know, yes, making a cake is artistic, but he's, as I said before, I think he's basically admitting these off the shelf cakes, he just throws them together. He doesn't give a shit. There's no creativity involved. That's what you just basically did it, dude.
This is a good one, Steve, and hi, Steve from Atheist News over there. Well, first of all, I have to tell you, his comment was, "One dildo cake, please, no sprinkles." But,
but you know what? Drips.
He has a good question. He says, "I don't know how a cake that is going to be consumed would fall under, quote, artistic expression. They weren't going to keep it as artwork. They were going to eat the cake."
Yeah, this is one of ADF's talking points.
And it failed in this Arizona case. It
fails in all of them. But he didn't... they didn't stress that point so much in this case when it got to the Supreme Court, and this is why the ruling was only partly on the First Amendment. And because they have lost, as you said, Deanna, they have lost every case based on, you know, cakes being art. And I know some bakers. I can't bake to save my life. Chocolate chip cookies, brownies, and banana bread. That's it. That's all you're going to get out of my oven if I even turn it on. Or remember to turn it on in some cases. But I am trained in food service. That has been my life for 44 years. So, you know, can a chef in a restaurant say, after he's created your dish, "Oh, I can't serve you because you're gay," or "I can't serve you because you're divorced. This goes against my religious belief and this is art"? It's like Dina said, it's food to be consumed.
Well, and, you know, this case, you know, in the next couple paragraphs, it goes on and points out that if the appellants, which is Brush and Nib, appellants would produce for a same-sex or opposite-sex wedding would likely, the items appellants would produce for a same-sex or opposite-sex wedding would likely be indistinguishable to the public. Take, for instance, an invitation to the marriage of Pat and Pat, whether created for Patrick and Patrick or Patrick and Patricia, or Alex and Alex, whether created for Alexander and Alexander or Alexander and Alexa. The invitation would not differ in creative expression. Further, it is unlikely that a general observer would attribute a company's products or offer services in compliance with the law as indicative of the company's speech or personal beliefs.
Well, yeah, like if you go, let's say you're a real enthusiastic political participant, and I decided that I wanted an NDP cake for election night last Thursday. And I went in, and the bakery was run by a bunch of progressive conservative twits. And I said, "Hey, I want an NDP cake." And they were like, "No, you can't have an NDP cake." Like this, it's ridiculous to think that means if they made me an NDP cake, suddenly they were endorsing the NDP and they weren't progressive conservative supporters anymore. like.
Well, I think one of
even think that, or if you make a cake for somebody's favorite hockey team or baseball team, oh, well, now that means I'm a fan of that team, and I can't make your cake because my family will disown me for for supporting our rival team to the one that we've always supported. Like, ugh, people.
Well, I think one of the points brought up in the Azúcar case, if I'm remembering correctly, I didn't review it, but is that she did offer to bake the cake without putting the message on it, but was going to supply the
icing stuff for them to write it
so he could write it himself. And the point and why that's important in her case is she wasn't refusing service, she was refusing the message. And what they tried to do in this case is they tried to compare that, her not writing the message to Phillips there, and this is where the whole inconsistency comes about. And one point that was made is that Phillips was entitled to a neutral and respectful consideration of his claims, but the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, acting inconsistently with its consideration of similar cases, i.e. Zucker, showed impermissible hostility towards his sincere religious belief. Then there's that whole discussion. A commissioner, and this was I was trying to remember, a commissioner compared his religious belief to defenses of slavery and Holocaust without any objections from the other commissioner. And that's the crux of the ruling, whether we agree with it or not.
It boils down to the nasty Human Rights Commission was mean to me.
Yeah. And the thing is, had those comments been made off record and nobody really knew about them, they'd be fine. But from what I understand, they were kind of made on the record.
As they should have been. And they were perfectly legitimate comments and perfectly good critiques of religion. But since we have this, we are still under this delusion in this country that there's such a thing as Christianity that doesn't, that where that slavery and everything disappears. That's not in there. If you're really a Christian somehow, that and that it's okay, and that religion is something to be respected and revered.
Exactly.
Then you
and treated with special feelings, because you're allowed. Like, I've seen so many judges be like, "Your argument is dumb," like, basically, and smack you down. Like, what? They're not allowed to do that anymore if your argument is, "Oh, well, I'm religious, so I can do whatever the fuck I want to." Like,
that's
so
because that's literally the law.
I'm really waiting for the person to show up and say, human sacrifice is part of my religion. This person is, person is criminal case. Person is found, slicing and dicing Mayan style, and is convicted, obviously, of first-degree murder. And his and he can show that he is he practices the Mayan religion, including the cutting out of the heart and the whole 9 yards. How much deference is a court going to give that? I mean,
that's employment division versus Smith, the peyote issue.
Well, and also Lukemi Baluba, A Incorporation versus Hialeah, with Santeria.
Mm-hmm.
And animal sacrifices. I mean, and this is the thing, like Sharon said, we're putting religion on a higher pedestal, and
than anything else. Yeah.
To me, and this doesn't even come from a quote atheist perspective. This is just like, okay, we have over 3,300 religions practiced in the U.S. alone.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So which one gets how are you going to satisfy everybody? You can't.
Yeah. You can't at all. And then, so where do you draw the line? Because how many criminal cases have I seen where a judge just goes off on the defendant? Like that fucking child raping coach, the gymnastics coach.
Oh,
Right.
massive.
Yeah.
She lost it on him. Or how many judges have I seen, you know, when they're got some horrible murderer or something, and the judge is like, you are a disgusting piece of, you know, shit humanity. Maybe didn't use shit, but close enough. And that's, we're okay with that. So if the judicial body that is making a ruling says that whichever you know, defendant, or I don't know what the terminology is for civil case, plaintiff or defendant, you know, is just off their rocker, why should they be prevented from saying? It's like in my feelings, you hurt my religious your God, you believe your God is all powerful. Why would it care? And if you know that your God is all powerful, then why should you care? That's his business. Let him fight the nasty people who were mean to them.
That's part of the problem in Idaho with the faith healing cases. They're giving religious exemptions to parents that fucking kill their children because they refuse medical care, but yet as adults they will get it themselves. I mean, we just had in the last 7 years 2 cases here in PA for the same reason. Actually, I believe it was the same fucking church. Scheibel, and I can't remember the name of the other one, but I don't think they went to the same building, but it was the same denomination, I should say. It's like, why should they get any special treatment? Oh, you're letting them off because it's their, quote, sincerely held religious belief. Well, my sincerely held religious belief tells me that you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah, we literally have a Jesus take the wheel law in Mississippi.
Yes.
Where, like, if a church owns a bus or something and you're transporting a bunch of kids, you don't have to have, like, the proper driver's license for it.
Yep.
Like,
you know, they use all these buses. I read a story about all these church buses. The church buses brand that's out there, those are old buses that were pulled off the road because they aren't unsafe, but they seem to have ended up in every Baptist church's parking lot.
And you don't have to have a proper driver's license to drive them in Mississippi.
No, I was floored when I heard that there are places that let non-licensed people drive church buses. Like,
something that's interesting to me about the intersection between religion and the justice system is, have you ever thought about, in all the history of, you know, let's just go with American legal system. Do you think there would have been the same number of death sentences if the people passing them, judges and juries, had been atheist? And I argue there would have been fewer because judges have, there's always that very kind of religious element in court. You know, they swear on the Bible. And then at the end, if they condemn someone to death, they say, may the Lord have mercy on your soul. And they feel like they're sending this person off to be like judged by God or receive God's mercy or whatever. Not that just you're taking someone's life and, ooh, what if they're innocent? Oh, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
God will sort it out.
Because God will reward them if we kill them and they're innocent, so I don't have to worry about it.
When I was a believer, I actually wrote a paper on capital punishment in college. And I, at the time, supported capital punishment with no caveats. None. Because you broke God's law, you should die. And meet your maker and then be sent to hell. Since I've been an atheist, which is going on 23-ish years now, I'm like, no. And it didn't take a whole hell of a lot to convince me, because I think by the time I got out of college, I was like already questioning some of this stuff, and it was like, no, it's like you have one life to live. You know, while there's some people I don't believe can be rehabilitated, i.e. child pedophilia, and I mean actual child pedophilia. I think something is seriously wrong. And
like serial killers would be high on the list.
Yeah, if you are caught red fucking handed like Andrew Andre Lauer, who shot Gabby Gifford.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That guy was nuts.
Yeah, then you get into whole. Well, okay. Case in point, I've been nuts.
No, but he was. I mean, I read some of his writing. He was not in the same universe with the rest of us.
Well, when I had my psychotic break, neither was I. But I didn't kill anybody, so I don't buy that excuse.
Well, yeah, but he's not out. He's not guilty by reason of insanity, and he's locked up for the rest of his life.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. You should be each case, obviously, there's going to be individual caveats, but killing a police officer, fire, ambulance, whatever. There's some, caveats in there, but I don't agree with the death penalty at all now. I mean, other than, some extenuating circumstances. And even then I hem and haw because I've read too many cases where, Texas just executed another innocent man.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Oh, and he's black.
I was going to say, and look at that, is another person of color who would have gotten.
Well, person of color or poverty.
Yeah, poor.
Can't afford a decent lawyer.
Yeah.
So I have a hard time. I mean,
not to say that there aren't public defenders that aren't decent, but it's more of a challenge, I think, to find someone.
If they're anything like our public defender, people are in serious trouble.
Well, and I think a lot of public defenders are way overworked and underpaid.
They are severely.
That's the main problem. Not that they're necessarily an inferior attorney, that they don't have the resources that a well-established
or even a prosecutor does. Prosecutors have resources out the butt, and then the defense, like, they don't have, like, we don't even have literally a public defender central, like, we have a public defender office, but it's not like we don't have a state public defender system in Mississippi.
Neither does Texas.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are just sitting in jail.
A judge in Texas, they'll tell you, you need to take public defender cases.
Yeah.
So in Texas, they just go to any law firm that does defense work and say, hey.
No, it's more like now things may have changed a bit, but back in the day, it was if you practiced in front of a particular judge in the state court and he had criminal cases, he'd be like, you need, but you get paid. It wasn't much, but you get paid. And I actually knew people who, when they got out of law school, that's what they did, is they went to court and they took cases, to get experience. I mean, it's horrible to think about that you've got a just wet behind the ears, just got their bar card, going, and trying to figure their way around the courthouse person, and they're representing people. I mean, I forget which death penalty case it was a few years back in Texas, and I said, I remember hearing about it, and I said, oh God, it sounds like nothing's changed in the last 3 decades, has it?
Yeah, and I mean, and again, there's going to be rookies who are great attorneys, but if they don't have the experience of working the system, and if they don't have the support of a well-established firm or a lot of different things that facilitate a good defense, it doesn't matter how brilliant they might be, they aren't going to have the they're going to have a handicap, basically. Right. Yeah. They're going to have a hell of a lot more work to do as good a job as somebody who has all of that support. So
yeah, you're right.
Well, that's what it boils down to is the time, the caseload, the support, the resources that they have, and public defenders, I think, get the short end of the stick on pretty much all of that.
Well, yeah, they do, because you have to ask for psychiatrists, if you want to do some kind of mental health testing, in the court, can be like, well, we don't have the money for that, or, it's just, you know, the other side is just they have access to all these experts and, you know, things like that. And experts are very, very expensive. So yeah, you're going to be squeezed a bit more, and you're not going to be able to get the best experts that you would otherwise probably be able to have.
Yes, because experts don't normally testify for free. They want a fee, and the better they are, the more people are demanding of their time, the more they charge, because they have to, you know, they can't be at all cases at all times, and so they have to make a living and charge appropriately for the time that they're needed. So yeah.
Well, one question that just kind of popped into my mind, although I can't really see this happening because there's enough civil rights lawyers and law firms, I think, to prevent this, but being a person of color or minority of any type, could you see where it comes down to, well, you can only have a rookie lawyer, or, you know, I mean, could they ever actually make that kind of a justification? Well, you can't have this lawyer. I mean, I know it's not possible because the way, you know, there's enough out there that wouldn't allow it, but that's the one thing that scares me, is how much of our rights are going to be eroded going forward.
Yeah.
I don't understand the question.
I think what I meant to bring out is how much of our rights should we be worried going forward for any minority, not just LGBT.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
Yeah. If hopefully the Trump judges are like, I don't like this job. I actually have to work, and I am a grifter.
Exactly.
So, you know, like, maybe that's really the only hope we have for now, because, and what I'm afraid of is that, you know, people are going to say, oh, well, you know, even if we do take back the House, say Trump does get kicked out of office, all this stuff, and we have, you know, say it all Democrat legislature and presidency, you know, the court is still going to have a lot of power to be able to block a lot of efforts. And so I feel like people are going to, you know, blame it and be like, oh, well, the Democrats aren't doing enough, so I'm just going to not vote again. And it's going to be this cycle all over again. So, yeah.
I mean, this is why I have to wonder at the wisdom of appointing Supreme Court judges for life.
I mean, I like it because it doesn't, I feel like it then, because in Mississippi, we have a lot of elected judges, and they very much run these very sort of charged ads where it's like, oh yeah, I lock them away and all this stuff. And then your decisions become more and more political and politicized. And especially if you're in a red state, there's that pressure to be like, oh, I give out the death penalty. Oh, I give out the, you know, the harshest sentences, or else you get kicked out and they'll replace you with someone who will. So, and then, but on the flip side of that, through the elected judge system, we have gotten a lot of minority judges, especially in the Delta. So we've gotten a lot of good black judges because of elected. I don't think Phil Bryant would ever elect or appoint anybody who, you know, an African American to the bench. I don't, unless it was like another Justice Thomas. But so yeah, it would, and yeah, not many of those types around here. But yeah, so there's two sides to that sort of elected judges, appointed judges thing. But I don't like the qualifications for it, for sure, because for Justice Court here, you have to just have a high school diploma or a GED.
What?
Yeah. You don't even have to have a law degree. So I've known many attorneys that will make arguments in Justice Court, and I've heard them be told things like, oh, well, you don't bring up the U.S. Constitution in my courtroom. It doesn't apply. Or I hate to disagree with the Mississippi Supreme Court. And it's like, motherfucker, you can't. Like, what are you... Like, what are you doing? And then it's like, then you have to have the money to appeal. And a lot of people just, it's not worth it. Like, so yeah. And you know, the Mississippi Supreme Court can't like take every single like badly decided case and do that. They literally don't have time for that. Like, it's, yeah, it's a messed up situation. And
wow.
I was
just checking here, our Supreme Court judges must retire at the age of 75.
Wasn't that the age of retirement a while ago, like in the 80s?
I don't.
Will be again soon.
For us here in the States, am I remembering?
No, the Supreme Court has never had a retirement age. The federal bench has never had a retirement age. But you'll remember, what was his name? Alabama, giving
Roy Moore.
Roy Moore. Remember, Roy Moore couldn't run again for state Supreme Court justice because he was hitting 70. Alabama has a mandatory retirement at 70 law.
Okay, maybe that's what I was thinking of. I thought, I mean, this was like when I was still in high school. I thought we did, but I guess not. But yeah, I kind of agree with Morgan. I mean, I like the life appointments because, one, it does offer some consistency, even though we may run into a Gorsuch problem. But I think, at least like with John Roberts, for an example, he while we might not agree with him, he's not fucking stupid, i.e. the Hobby Lobby, the ACA case.
Mm-hmm.
Who would have thought he would have been the turning vote on that? But I honestly think, like in his case, he knows somebody or has somebody in his family who has benefited from it and knew if they took it away, that person was dead. So I think there's a growth potential, a reality potential. While
some justices get more liberal on the bench too. That's
because they see, especially in Robert's case, because he's much younger than a lot of our justices. In fact, I think he's younger than I am. I think, like you said, they become more liberal. They grow. They realize, wow, there's an awful lot of these cases. Maybe I should rethink this. But you switch them every 10 years. I don't think that would happen. I think, in fact, I think they would get more and more conservative. Yeah.
Like a long tenure, I don't see an issue with, but life.
Well, you got to remember back when that law that.
Because that'd get rid of RBG and all the liberal justices if we had that.
I mean, yes. Back then, life was like 72 to 75. Now we're running into our RBG territory.
I like Steve made a comment too, talking about the not having to have had a law degree. Says, reminds me of when George W. Bush tried to appoint Harriet Miers to the Supreme Court.
She had a law degree.
Despite never serving as a judge ever.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's
not good.
Or did she have any experience in government whatsoever?
She worked down the hall. She had a white office in the White House. She advised George W. Bush. She's a real lawyer. She just was not a judge. It was a lot like a lot of the people Trump nominated. It was, but Bush got shut down for it. And a lot of it may have to do with the fact that it was a female person and she was unmarried, which either meant she was probably a slut, and I'm using their words, not mine. Like, I'm not saying their judgment, not my judgment. Or
basically, if you're that age,
heaven forbid, gay.
So if you were that age and unmarried woman, then obviously those were the two choices. You're a slut or you're gay. Gotcha. Now, I just learned that in our court, there are two possible requirements. Either must have been a judge of a superior court, or, and I don't see how this is comparable, but a member of at least 10 years standing of the bar of a province or territory. I don't know how 10 years of bar membership equates having been a judge on a superior court.
Oh, it doesn't.
I was going to say, that seems very, I
Yeah, but I do think it'd be funny, even though Obama was never a judge, he was at least a professor of constitutional law. So I thought it would have been amazing had Hillary Clinton won the presidency and then appointed Obama to the Supreme Court, because that's totally allowed.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, supposedly that was in the works if she had won. That was not just a rumor. That was actually.
Oh, really? I just said that would be funny. Like,
yeah, it was actually something they were contemplating, because the Democrats as a whole wanted to keep President Obama in the mix in politics because of his age. He's not that old, you know. Although
now he's on a beach.
Yeah.
I can't say he's not a silver hair because he's gone gray.
Oh, and Steve says that what was her name? The woman we were talking about,
Harriet Myers.
Myers, yes. He said, yeah, she was never she was a lawyer, never a judge, but she was the lottery commissioner who worked for Bush.
Ew! And you know, the lottery in Texas has such an interesting history. Not that I'm going to go into it in any, but people, it was resisted for years and years and years, and then finally we got scratch-off tickets. The year my granddad turned 75, which would have been 1987. And my parents called me and said, your grandfather is turning 75. What are we going to get him for a present? You know, one of those man that's got everything deals. And I just off the cuff, why don't you buy him a bunch of scratch-off tickets? And do you know they did that? You know, because it was so new.
Yeah.
So new. And he lived up in darkest East Texas, north of Tyler. So, you know, there are only two churches in town. One was Baptist and one was Methodist.
Only two. Wow, that seems pretty sparse for Texas.
Yeah. Well, maybe the better way to put it was there were only two types, Baptist and Methodist. They had Southern, missionary, you know.
Denominations. Okay, I gotcha. Two denominations.
Yeah, they had different, you know, they had the missionary Baptist, they had the Southern Baptist, they had the regular Methodist, they had the African Episcopal Methodist, you know.
Hi.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
A couple other interesting things I've just learned about the Canadian Supreme Court. We have 9 justices, which makes sense. And we actually have 4 ladies on our Supreme Court, which is cool. And we even have a cool logo. I don't know if I can let me share this.
I heard there's a basketball court on like the top level of the Supreme Court, and it's called the highest court in the land.
Oh, yeah, I heard that too. But if you could see,
they have the Santa outfits, just like the Maryland Court of Appeals.
Yeah,
they do have Santa outfits. That's what I was thinking.
Which court has the Santa?
If you ladies,
what possessed them for that attire?
I love it. I feel like I'm gonna get presents if I go and do oral argument. Like
if you ever practice law in Canada, you even as just attorneys, you wear like the little ref thingy and you wear robes and everything.
Well, at least they don't make you wear a wig like over in Britain.
Yeah, I went to a British court once and I was just like, this is wild. Like, what is happening? Why in the world? And they're so expensive. I'm like, Jesus, no, I'm not wearing a dusty ass wig. Like, what the fuck?
For you, Morgan.
Oh my God, they do look like little Santas. It's adorable. Little Canadian Santas. I love it.
Oh my.
But you notice we got the cool logo up here in the corner. It's like this.
It is.
With
Yeah,
this.
It looks like a wedding invitation I'd get from a fancy like Southern Belle. Monogram and all that.
Mm-hmm.
We have a spiffy Supreme Court.
Yeah, you do. They look much more jolly than ours are all in these like billowing black robes and it's all serious.
No, see, in Canada, the lawyers wear the robes, the black robes. Yeah.
You brought a question to mind.
Yes.
Considering the infiltration of the Reich up into Canada, could you ever see a case like Masterpiece or any of these?
I could see somebody trying. Our human rights laws are a little they have a little bit more teeth to them. Although, don't listen to Jordan Peterson for fuck's sakes, because he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
I heard an article
if you haven't done a session on Jordan Peterson, can you please do that? My God, please.
We should. But no, our Human Rights Tribunal cannot throw you in jail for what you say. If you are actively discriminating against someone using what you say, you could be fined. And if you refuse to pay your fine, you might get thrown in jail for contempt of court. But that's for contempt of court, not for your speech. So don't be a dumbass. But I could see somebody trying, especially after Thursday. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I keep forgetting that you've got Ford Nation, which is apparently some sort of takeoff on Make America Great Again or something.
Yes. And he's a professed lover of all things Trump. And
I feel so sorry.
Is he just the mayor of Toronto or what?
No. That was his brother.
The one that smoked crack. Oh yeah, that guy was hilarious.
Yes, the crack smoking brother who I don't wish on anyone. So Rob Ford has sadly died of cancer. No, I'm glad he's not in politics anymore. I'm not glad he's dead, but there is good reason to believe that our new premier was a drug dealer. He was
selling his brother the crack.
Probably. He's just sued by his brother's widow because he was the executor of the estate, which there was $1 million corporation, and she is alleging that he has deprived her and her children of a good chunk of their inheritance.
But he seems like such a good guy.
Oh, and he gave us all dollar beer, don't you know? Or at least he plans to. Which
what the hell is with dollar beer? Can you just explain that?
That sounds like a bribe. Like that. I'm like, how is that not a bribe? Like it's just like I'll give you a beer for $1.
Okay, so in Canada, all liquor and beer, whatever alcohol is doled out through government-controlled businesses. So we have the beer store, that's what it's called, the beer store.
That's what we have here.
And then we have the Liquor Licensing Control Board of Ontario, or we call it the LCBO. And that's where they sell some beer, like imports and more hoity-toity stuff. And that's where you get all your other booze. So we don't sell alcohol in corner stores or grocery stores at all. Like those are the only places. Now we and this is provincial, right? So Quebec, they've always sold it in corner stores and their drinking age is a year younger than everywhere else. So
18, really?
Yeah, it's 18 in Quebec and it's 19 everywhere else. So when we were seniors in high school, we got to go on a Quebec trip for 4 days. All of the 18-year-olds were like, woohoo, we can drink all weekend and kind of thing. But, so just recently, the Ontario government has relaxed some regulations and they've started allowing beer to be sold in grocery stores and like Walmart and that kind of places. Now we used to, and I don't know how many years ago because I don't actually like beer, so I've never actually bought it myself. But we used to there was a couple of companies that brought in like really cheap beer cans that were sold for like $1 a can. And the government, and I don't remember which one, whether it was the one that just got trounced or the one before that, but they put taxes on those beer that beer to make it so that it wasn't that cheap anymore because they felt that it was dangerous and yada, yada, yada. So Ford is now saying that not only will he take those taxes off the beer and make it $1 again, but he's also going to push ahead and make the beer available in corner stores. So that won him votes from every redneck and college student in the fucking province right there.
So it's a dumber version of Trump's wall.
Sorry, what, Morgan?
A dumber version of Trump's wall.
Yes, yes. Dumber.
Like some promise that he's not going to likely be able to keep. So. No, I don't think he's going to be like $1 beers all around. Like, Jesus.
Yeah. And so the other thing he did, which got him the uber religious vote, is now abortion. We have no laws restricting abortion in any way in Canada. And most provinces fund abortion through our single payer health care. So in Ontario, if you need an abortion, you get sent, you get referred to the hospital, and they perform it usually in a hospital, and it's free. Well, free, you've already paid for it through your
contributions.
Yeah. So you don't have to pay out of pocket for an abortion. He wants to defund abortion, of course. So that won him the religious vote. And he is wanting to repeal, we have something called cap and trade, which is an environmental protection legislation. He is vowed to get rid of that. And I think there's one or two other environmental protection laws. So that won him over all of the big business. So that's basically how he managed to pull this off, from what I understand. So the beer got him basically everybody who wasn't a religious nut job or big business.
And the majority probably doesn't vote, just like in America.
Oh, well, yeah. And funny you should mention that, Sharon. So the voter turnout was 58%.
That's way higher than what we have.
Well, that's the highest turnout we've had since 1999.
That still would be like crazy higher than what I think that we've had.
Usually ours is between 23 and 35%.
Yeah, and that's a good turnout.
I think is absolutely disgusting myself, but
yeah, I do too.
Well, I think going back to the whole issue with masks, we're seeing the
sorry, I just wanted to make sure people also remember that we have more than just two parties to choose from as well. Mm-hmm. I had, I think, 6 or 7 to choose from on my ballot. Sorry, Beth.
No, I was just saying, I think the differences between the U.S. and Canada in certain hot button issues exemplifies why, not voting and not to harp on the whole third party thing, but I know one of our guests, God, years ago, had, it was around election time, had mentioned where the votes that Stein was able to, quote, take away, especially in Pennsylvania, statistically determined,
right?
That Trump, and it shows that, okay, yeah, granted, okay, your guy won, okay, no, fine, okay, but your guy is now, besides his international fuck-ups,
oh yeah, Canada's our enemy now.
Yeah, we're a security threat, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, irregardless of all that, I mean, ignore that for a second, but what he does, his nominations and his appointments have ramifications, not just for that moment, but these ramifications we're going to face for years to come.
Yeah, who knew that elections have consequences? And
exactly, thank you.
Yeah.
And Sharon, you hit the nail on the head. Consequences. And whether it affects you now, it's going to affect you eventually, because with firms like ADF, like Liberty Council, like JPI, which is out in the West. They're throwing spaghetti at the wall. They have been for years. These cases are not accidental. If you read up, there's an article, it's put out by Think Progress, called The 800-Pound Gorilla. And it goes on, I can't remember the whole title off the top. I'll link it in notes. But it talks about their agenda. And people hear me harp about the Reich and the Reich's agenda. Guess who? Robert P. George basically wrote it. You know, it's ADF, the Beckett Front, Knights of Columbus, all these these are no accidents. They're political activism. This is the spaghetti they're throwing, and they're hoping something sticks. It started with citizens, went to Hobby Lobby. Surprisingly, they weren't expecting to win. They were shocked when they did. So they went after the ACA. Now they're going after, quote, religious, liberty, religious freedom. But it's not going to just be LGBT people. It's eventually going to trickle down, and it already has, to people of color, to disabled, to women.
I'm just waiting for the day, when it's become an absolute free for all. And for example, I've told this to my representatives. You people, take the side of the evangelicals, and they're Mormon, every one of them. And I'm like, they hate your guts.
Mm-hmm.
If you could quiz them with a blowtorch, they'll tell you they hate your guts. They think you're cold. And the fact that you're willing to talk to these people and be on their side, when if they have the opportunity, they drive you out of the state.
Well, like I said, I ran into on a thread of Ali Rizvi's before the show. I couldn't believe it. A Pakistani Trump supporter.
Oh dear God! I was like,
I was like, dude, he would throw you out of the bus faster than you would blink, and he wouldn't even look twice. Like, he would throw you over the wall to Mexico. He wouldn't care that you're from Pakistan. You're brown. You belong in Mexico. Like, that's
Well, and the thing is, and I've mentioned before, and I wrote an article about it on my blog, where basically these cases, they're going after LGBT and minorities. They actually want to eliminate minimum wage.
Yes.
They want to eliminate the right of women to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, this is in their fucking agenda.
Mm-hmm.
This is no longer a dream. And I wrote that article 4.5 years ago. And at the time, it was just little whispers here and there. I'm watching it unfold. I can guarantee you within the next 10 years, the next thing up on the docket is going to be our right to vote.
Yeah, this is a country of lazy motherfuckers who can't be bothered. We can drown out any nutty minority if people just turned out to vote, but they can't be bothered. So, you guys, I gotta run. I got an apartment to vacate.
So it's about time for us to wrap everything up anyway, Sharon. So, again, thank you for joining us. It was great to having you with us. And if you have any things you want to promote and everything, to tell people where to find you before you go, please do.
Oh, thanks. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. This has been really fun. And I do a podcast. It's been on hiatus as I've been moving and everything, but in a few weeks it'll be back. Habeas Humor, HABEASHUMOR. It's on Twitter, it's on iTunes, Libsyn, and all that. Facebook, so...
That's like habeas corpus, right?
Very similar.
Aha! Very cool. Well, that's awesome. And again, thank you for taking the time out from your move to hang out with us for a bit.
Of course, anytime. So just everybody vote. Vote.
I know. If I just, you know what? If I could make it that compulsory to vote, I would. I don't actually have a problem with that.
It should at least be a day off or a weekend.
Well, now, your employer is legally obligated to give you time to vote. So there is that, but still, I just think if people, like, if you had to get like some sort of medical exemption or something to not vote, I just think everybody should have to do that, because the whole idea of not being able to bitch if you didn't vote, people are so fucking lazy they don't even care about that. Well, I'm just gonna bitch anyway. Well, shut the fuck up. Yeah, if you don't vote, shut the fuck up, and if something happens you don't like, well, it's your own goddamn fault.
Well, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Shrone out.
And Dee, thank you so much for joining us as well. And if there's anything you want to promote and all, you please go ahead.
Nothing in particular. No, just yeah, nothing in particular.
Oh well, you'll have to. People can follow you on Facebook if they want to catch up.
Yeah, and I'm also on Twitter as well. 3M's IRELE. If you want to catch up with me there, if I pick it, I post pictures and stuff like that.
You can catch up on who you're picketing currently and why.
Yeah, and I mean, right now it's the Sovereign Grace people. I need to bring what's his name, Dingbat, back into it. You know who I'm talking about, Driscoll the Dingbat, because I have to tell you this. Driscoll is selling himself to a new crowd. Okay, he totally wore out his welcome with the reformed types, and so now he has got a new book contract. It comes out on October 2nd, and it's being published by Charisma House, which publishes Charisma magazine. So he's going from being super reformed and being published by Crossway to being published by Charisma House. I mean, you know, he wore out his welcome, he wore out his grift, and so he's got a new grift going. We'll see what happens.
That's Dr. Mike Brown's organization, and they like to endorse ex-witches, ex-gays, the
whole bunch of them. But yeah, Brown's got me blocked on everything because I've given him.
Me too.
So,
I'm blocked too. I lasted one post.
Well, again, Dee, thank you very much for joining us. It was great having your perspective as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Miss Morgan, where can we find you?
All right, we can catch me on the Bi Skeptical podcast of Trav Mamone on iTunes, Spreaker, and Stitcher. And you can also find me on Twitter at Mostring. That's MOSTRING. And you can also find me on Facebook, Morgan L. Stringer.
Awesome. And I don't know if you saw, Trav went to bed a little while ago. They were getting kind of tired, but
gotcha.
I said goodbye for them. And yeah, just a quick word too. So thank you. We had a nice busy chat tonight with Steve and Alice, and we had Dave from the Great Debate Community in there for a while. And who else was in here? Goodness.
Was our friend Vitrol?
Yes. Our Muslim troll. He's gone to bed too, though. He's very happy to tell me how wonderful the Quran is, and I don't believe him, but that's fine.
I thought it was the other one, the Chaos.
No, not Chaos. No, we had the Muslim troll.
Okay.
And Belgarath, who also has gone to bed, but yeah, I know. And I thought doing it at 7:30 was early, but I guess not. But that's okay. So thanks to all of you folks for hanging out with us. Alice blocked him, the Muslim dude.
Don't blame you.
Probably a good idea, Alice. He's very competitive. So, but anyway, and Beth, before we forget, where do we find you?
Well, before I go into that, Dee, correct me if I'm wrong, but in a couple of your postings on your Facebook wall when you are picketing, you have offered if people are in the area where you are picketing for them to join you?
Yes. If, you know, and I need to be more I need to be more aggressive about saying, yes, I'm going to be out there instead of just throwing shit in the car and driving off.
Well, I think what you do is amazing. And, you know, you're able to put your words into action. And, you know, I know one time you did post where you were going to be, where you're going, one or two people did join you. So, you know, if she posts somewhere that she's going to be in, that's your area, hey, drive by, give her a honk, give her a thumbs up, whatever.
I've gotten those, by the way. People have driven by and honked at me, and I really appreciate getting the feedback from people. It does make me feel better about being out there. So.
Well, if you're feeling impulsive, Dee, just you know, tweet on your way out the door or something.
Yeah, I'll do that.
But yeah, I find it amazing what you do as far as the picketing, because, well, I probably most end up getting my ass arrested because that's just me. That's why I don't do kind of stuff like that. But
well, I'm discussing with some local friends because our friend Jordan Peterson is speaking in Kitchener very soon.
Oh God.
In July, and I'm discussing with some local ladies that we are looking into the possibility of protesting. None of us have done it before, so we are trying to find out what, you know, from the city, if there's anything that we need to do or law we have to follow or something. So we're looking into it. We shall see. We're trying to be careful because we don't want to make him a free speech martyr either. So
yeah.
no.
We're trying to do see if it can be done. We're looking at doing it maybe handmade style. We're not sure yet. We'll see. I would have liked to have gone, but I don't want to give him my money. So tickets they're at a pretty pricey venue in town, so the tickets are like around $100, $110.
Jesus,
this dude is racking in the serious money.
I know
he is.
I know, it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. But we will see. We may try and do something depending on what we find out. But yeah, protesting. If he defunds abortion and we have issues, I may end up picketing for that too. We'll see. But yeah, so you can find me also on Holy Crap, the Vlogcast, which airs on Sunday mornings at 12:05 a.m. And you can find about that at holycrapthevlogcast.com. And that's hosted by Shujin Tribble, and we have a motley crew of panelists, and we talk about just about whatever the hell Shujin decides we're going to talk about. So there's that. Next week is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to this. We are going to be talking to Michael Wiseman, who does a show called The Bible Says What? And the premise of his show is he quizzes Christians on what's in the Bible and exposes the people who think they know what's in there but really don't. So I got to ask him if he's ever used Ezekiel 23:20 before.
Oh my God! Even I know what that is.
First.
that is like seriously pornographic.
All of Ezekiel 23 is. That's just the best.
Well, isn't the Song of Solomon also
by comparison? Ezekiel, if Song of Solomon is like really soft core Cinemax, kind of porn, then Ezekiel is like serious hardcore hustler porn.
Yeah, it's like
I know
I would know the difference, but that's kind of the way I put it.
Yes, indeedy. Yeah, whoever wrote Ezekiel would really appreciate Steve's dildo cake. I'm just saying.
Yes.
But that's next week, and that'll be at 7:30 p.m. Eastern as usual. So I'm quite looking forward to that. And you can also find me at Full Quranic, fullquranic.com, where I read the Quran so you don't have to. Which is why when Buddy was telling me how great the Quran is, I'm like, you're full of shit. That thing is awful. Like, just nasty.
How far have you gotten so far?
50 surahs.
Did you start from the front because it goes in?
No, I'm reading it in chronological order.
You read? Oh, so you haven't gotten to 2, obviously.
No. I know about 2, but I just haven't. I'm not there yet. But that's okay because 50 surahs so far has been wall to wall Allah going, look at this, look at Noah. His people didn't listen to me, and look how I fucked them up. And here's Job, and his people didn't listen to me, and look how I fucked them up. And there's Moses, and his people didn't listen to me, and look how I fucked them up. So it's just that over and over and over. Alice, good luck. Thank you, Alice. I've actually taken like a 2-month hiatus because I was just like trying to get motivated to read more of that shit, but I'm gonna have to because now also tomorrow night I am recording on a new show that I just discovered, and it's called Your Atheist Pastor, and he likes to interview other atheists. So someone on my friends list had gone on the show and said, hey, I did the show, want to listen to me, here's the link, and I did. And the show has a, hey, would you like to be on the show page? So I said, why not? And so, yeah, I will let people know via social media when that posts, because I don't know exactly when he posts his show because it is pre-recorded. But I'm recording that tomorrow night, so I'm excited about that. But I need to get back at reading that god-awful, nasty book. But, yeah. There's that. But anyway, I think that's about it for tonight. We're a little bit past time, but whatever. It was a good discussion. I think it was very productive. Folks in the chat seem to enjoy it, so that's good too. So again, ladies, thank you very much, and I will send us out with the Humanist Creed. We'll see everybody next week.
I know the truth and power of reason and of rational thinking, and I will use them to my advantage. I know the truth and power of educating myself and of expanding my intellectual boundaries, and I will educate myself. I know the truth and power of vanquishing ignorance, and I will do so whenever the opportunity presents itself. I know the truth and power of morality without supervision, and of true and accurate righteousness. I know the truth and power of obliterating tyranny, be it intellectual, emotional, or philosophical, and will work toward that goal whenever and however possible. I know the truth and power of human ingenuity. I know the truth and power of human compassion, and I will be mindful of the welfare of others. I know the truth and power of equality and fairness for all living things. I know the truth and power of the importance of our families, our friends, and our fellow men and women. I know the truth and power of human stewardship of our lands, our waters, and our skies, and I will try to act to preserve our environment. I know the truth and power of the sciences of mathematics, of physics, and of chemistry, and of the important role of these disciplines in understanding the workings of this cosmos. I know the truth and power of the rejection of all notions or beliefs that reside in the supernatural or the superstitious, and of those notions or beliefs that we are not supposed to be able to explain. And I know that these rejections are necessary for humankind's survival. I am a human being with a free mind, liberated from irrational influence and from unreasonable dogma.